I love that song, and I love when you play the funky guitar. In my best life, you're just playing guitar around me all the time, so it's beautiful. Thanks, Gabe. Do you remember growing up and you have that moment where you go to college and you make all these changes in your life and you're really feeling like a new person? And then you come home that first week and you feel like everything is right. You've been living it up. You're a new man or a woman. And then you go to church in the place where you grew up, or you go to your family's house and they say, "Hey, Red, good to see you again." And all of a sudden you're like 7 to 11 again. And all that work you've done on your being and your soul feels like it's vanished. This is kind of the atmosphere in which Paul writes his letter to the church of Galatia. There are all of these new converts to the faith, and they're coming from a Gentile space where they haven't had the rules of tradition. They haven't had those in their life. But now there's this whole group of people who are saying in order for them to be faithful, they have to follow all of these new sets of rules. And they're like, but wait, the thing that you sold me on about becoming a follower of Jesus was that Jesus already did it all. That his life, death, and resurrection took care of everything. Why? And now I have to do stuff? What do you mean I have to do stuff? And they're like, no, you don't have to do stuff. You also have to be circumcised. Not little stuff. Painful stuff. Well, it is little stuff, but it's painful stuff. Sorry, inappropriate. These are the things that should just stay inside my head, and they don't. So it's in this space to which Paul writes in Galatians chapter 5, he says, it is for freedom that Christ has set you free. It's for freedom. The entire work, life, death, resurrection of Jesus, the entire point of it all was that you would be able to live freely. And so he says, so then stand firm then. Don't let yourself be burdened by the yoke of slavery. And here Paul's talking about two types of slavery that they're facing in their life. And we face those same types of slavery. The slavery to their old way of life that Paul calls flesh. Where they're just in drunken orgies and all kinds of things like that he names in this text. He's like, stay away from that. Because that's not you either. But also, don't let the church tell you that you have to do all these other things in order to be connected to Jesus because it's already done. Be free because I set you free for freedom's sake. And he goes on in that passage, and just before we get to the text that's on the banners and that was read to us today, he says, listen, you want to sum up the entirety of the law? Just love your neighbor as yourself. That's what it is. Just love your neighbor as yourself. You've fulfilled the law once you've done that. And then he jumps in and he says, but the fruit of the Spirit, what comes from the fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Have you ever stood among the redwoods? Tilted your head back and arched your neck, eyes chasing to the sky, trying to catch the top of something that seems to have no end. They're massive, magnificent, and yet the seed of one of these trees is no bigger than a tomato seed. And and they grow 35 stories tall. They survive thousands of years. Insects can't kill them. Floods don't drown them out. In fact, it brings them life. Most fires just scar them but don't destroy them. They have really no enemies except us, because we like to cut them down. Their height is part of what gives them life. In dry seasons like we've been in, they literally drink from the fog. The moisture condenses in their bark, and then it rolls down the bark in silver streaks and feeds the root system. But here's the part that undoes me. I've talked about this before. You would think that a tree that is that tall would have roots that go that deep, that would anchor itself into the foundation of the earth to hold its massiveness. But that's not true. Redwood roots are actually quite shallow. They're 5 to 7 feet deep. So how do they stand up? How do they weather centuries of storms and floods? Redwoods spread their roots wide, sometimes as far as 100 feet. And when they spread out their roots, not only do they spread them far and wide, but they also intertwine them with other redwoods. Two trees becoming one, fused together by their roots. Sometimes, in fact, they even sprout new life from those rooted connections. And when one tree dies, it doesn't just disappear. In fact, the death of it feeds the other trees. Nutrients flowing through the roots. Death itself nourishes the grove of trees. Redwoods do not survive well alone. They very rarely stand in isolation. Their greatness is actually impossible without one another. See, redwoods are strong because they belong to each other. Paul is saying and writing to a community that is trying to figure out, what does it mean for us to belong? And they're under all this pressure. There are voices around them saying, if you want to be a part of God's family, you've got to prove it. Follow the rules. Follow the dietary laws. Follow all 600 rules that are written in the Hebrew text. And you know what? Might as well be circumcised too. Because that's going to show us you're really in. And Paul says, no, do not do that. That means nothing to Jesus any longer. In fact, Paul is so disturbed by it. He says, listen, if you're going to cut off the foreskin, you might as well take off the whole thing. Don't believe me? Read Galatians chapter 5. Because Paul says, Christ has already done the work of freedom. Everything you do from that point following is on you. He's already set you free. For freedom's sake, there's nothing else there to bind you. Freedom is not about rule keeping. It's not about proving your worth. And it is solely about being rooted in the Spirit of Christ. And when you are rooted, something grows. And Paul calls this something in Galatians chapter 5, fruit. The fruit of the Spirit, he writes, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Now notice, Paul doesn't say fruits, plural. It's singular, it's fruit. And this fruit has many flavors or characters. And the very first word that Paul uses to describe what the fruit of the Spirit tastes like, what it does inside of us, is love. Now for Paul, love isn't just at the top of the list. Remember, he said you want to take care of all of the law and the prophets. The way that you do that is by loving your neighbor as yourself. He's saying that love is the root system. It is the redwood root that holds everything else together. Now, when we say love, it's easy to shrink it, right? To think about some sentiment, a beautiful Hallmark card, something private, something soft. But this love that Paul is talking about is not just mere politeness or Minnesota nice. It's actually active, self-giving, justice-seeking love. And the love that Paul names here is radical. It is active. It is a commitment. It's choosing to be with and for someone else's good. And this love is the Spirit's work within us. Love that builds community where everyone belongs. This is why Paul puts it first. Because without love, joy simply becomes shallow happiness. Without love, peace just becomes avoiding conflict. Without love, patience just becomes tolerance. But with love, the fruit flourishes. Love holds it all together. It's the redwood root system, wide and intertwining and holding us up when storms come. Because love is not just our effort, right? This is the beautiful thing about this fruit. Lest we think this is about a self-help sermon. It is not about what you do. It is about what the Spirit has done. It is the very character of God alive in us. These characters of the fruit that Paul is naming aren't about us putting up a bunch of practices and making sure we add a new law of the fruit of the Spirit. He's saying, if you dwell in the root system, what will come from your roots and what people will eat off of your tree is love and joy and peace and patience. It's Christ's love that grows in and out of us. We are living in a world where roots are being pulled apart. More connected than ever, than any other time in human history. And yet we're lonelier than ever. Families are fractured by politics, communities are torn apart by fear, and neighborhoods and neighbors are divided by suspicion of each other. Even churches are drawing lines and saying who belongs and who doesn't. And yet, Paul is saying to them and to us, if you live in the Spirit, you are rooted in love, and that Spirit grows fruit in us. Our part is about staying connected, abiding, making our home in the root of the outpouring of God's Spirit. The outpouring looks like love that creates belonging. Where there was exclusion, where there was rivalry, where there was fracture, Christ's love brings connectedness. That's why this love is so radical, because it insists you belong because of what Christ has already done. You are loved right here, right now, no matter what. I remember when we moved here during COVID and I was having coffee with many of you at Starbucks. One by one, you would come and we would have coffee together and I'd get to meet you and you would tell me your story and I would share my story with you. And it was like every day I was being handed a new puzzle piece, but without the picture on the box. And so people would come and we would sit and have coffee and it'd be like, here's a new puzzle piece. And at night I would go home and I would try to jam those puzzle pieces together and think, how in God's name does this church go together? I can't figure it out. Because I'm pretty sure that person's not going to like this person because of what they think. But that's what the Spirit does. Because St. Matthew is a place rooted in the Spirit of God. The things that divide the rest of the world will not divide us. Because we're rooted in the love of Christ. Think again about the redwoods. They don't just hold each other up, they feed each other. When one is weak, the other sends nutrients through the root system. When one falls, it still nourishes the grove, roots passing life back and forth, refusing to let one stand alone. That's what love does. The Spirit of love says that your survival is tied to mine. That your thriving is my concern. That your life and my life are inextricably bound together. And love doesn't stop at the categories we wish it would. It doesn't ask, do you deserve it? It doesn't ask, have you done the things that I'm setting up in front of you to say that you've earned it? In fact, Paul says in this same passage, he says, there is no longer Jew or Greek, slave or free, male or female. All of us, all of you are one in Christ Jesus. Jesus is the one in whom we see the redwood system, root system most clearly. His love, even in his death, feeds life within our community. This love leads us to radical belonging, the kind that breaks down any wall that we would like to put in its place. So what does it look like? Maybe it looks like hospitality, opening your table, welcoming not just friends, but strangers, maybe some enemies to your table. Maybe it looks like listening across difference, not for the purpose of arguing, which is one of my favorite. Not for the purpose of winning, but to actually understand. Maybe it looks like love in action, kindness, generosity, patience with one who is struggling. But remember, here's the thing. This is not a self-improvement project. The fruit of the Spirit is not something you grit your teeth and make happen. It is gift. It is Spirit-grown gift. It's the natural outpouring of where the energy of the Spirit is. So when we're not feeling these fruit in our being, the question is how do we tap into the root? How do we rest in the presence of Christ? How do we tap in to who the Spirit is and moving within us and how that plays? How do we go deeper? We're really good at working on our outsides. But this work is inside. Like, are we sitting in the presence of Christ? Are we connecting to the things that moves God and let it move through us? See, our job isn't to manufacture love. Our job is to stay rooted in the Spirit, to let our roots spread wide, to intertwine, to fuse, even with trees that we don't understand, so that love can flow through us. So imagine this with me. Imagine a church that stands like a grove of redwoods. Not tall and proud as individuals, but strong because our roots are woven together. Imagine a place where when one falters, the other holds them up. Or where when one rejoices, the whole grove sways back and forth in joy together. Where even in death, life flows back into the roots, feeding the community. This is love. This is radical belonging. This is the fruit of the Spirit. And when the world looks at a community like that, a grove of love rooted deep in God's Spirit, they taste something good. Hear me, church. The fruit that comes off the tree is not for us, but it's for all those who pass by and glean from its branches to taste and to see the goodness of God, to remind others that they too are already set free, because when you've been freed, your fruit tastes free. And then they begin to catch a glimpse of God's dream. So let us be deeply rooted in love, rooted in belonging, and rooted in the Spirit who makes us one. Please pray with me. God, we come from all different realities in this room. What we long for together is to be set free in your freedom and to rest in your Spirit and for your fruit to nourish our community and world. So may we abide. May we look for you in all the places of our life this next week. May we see where your Spirit is at work and set there with you. In your name we pray.